They said, "Wait in the car, Grandma. It's too crowded inside for you." So I waited in a hot parking lot for 8 hours. And then I bought a one-way bus ticket to Santa Fe. I should have known something was off when Kimberly insisted on renting the SUV with the captain's chairs and automatic sliding doors. "It'll be easier for Mom to get in and out," she said. What she meant was it'd be easier to leave me behind. We were in Asheville for what Brian called our last big family hurrah before the kids get too busy. A weekend trip, just the 5 of us, well 6, counting me with tickets to see some washed-up pop star from the 90s perform live at the Ridgefield Amphitheater. I used to like his music, back when it was playing on cassette tapes and not nostalgia tours. Kimberly was in her element directing the kids, checking wristbands, smoothing their hair. Brian barely looked at me, but he handed me a bottle of water and said, "Just hang out here, Mom. It's going to be crowded in there, standing room only, and it's mostly young folks anyway. We'll bring you a funnel cake when it's over." And just like that, I was deposited. In a parking lot made of gravel and clay row E, space 47 under the hot breath of a late Carolina afternoon. They left the engine running for the AC, but took the keys with them. "Don't open the doors unless it's us," Kimberly called over her shoulder like I was a child home alone. They disappeared into the crowd in matching Team Morrow t-shirts, even the kids. Mine they hadn't bothered to give me. Probably thought I'd forget to wear it. I sat in the middle row seatbelt still on for reasons I couldn't name. I stared at the back of the headrest, the condensation gathering on the plastic dashboard. The car smelled like sunscreen and pretzels, and a hint of something artificial, like the air freshener had given up long ago. For the first hour, I watched people. Happy people. Grandparents dancing with toddlers. Teenagers piggybacking on someone's shoulders. I could hear the bass thumping from the amphitheater down the hill, dull and insistent like a heart that wouldn't settle. By the second hour, the AC started to fade. I cracked the window with the manual switch only to remember no keys, no power. The bottle of water was warm now. I opened the lunchbox Kimberly had packed for me, half a turkey sandwich and an apple. The kind of lunch you give someone when you want to say you tried, but not too hard. By the third hour, the sun began to dip behind the trees, but the heat held on. My phone buzzed once, then died. No charger. Of course not. Kimberly's was the family phone. They shared one cord. I hadn't needed one, not when I was just supposed to wait. The amphitheater erupted in cheering. I didn't know what song was playing, but I knew it wasn't for me. A man in a reflective vest walked by, glancing into cars. When he saw me, he hesitated. "Ma'am, you okay?" he asked. I smiled politely, the way women my age do when we're trying not to cry. "Just waiting on family," I said. He nodded, but lingered. "The show's about wrapped. Might be a bit before the crowd clears out." I wanted to ask him what was worse, being forgotten or being remembered, just late enough to feel like an afterthought. Instead, I asked, "Is there a bus station nearby?" He blinked, caught off guard. "Downtown, maybe 20 minutes. Greyhound runs through there." "Where you headed?" I shrugged. "Anywhere far enough." He offered his phone. I dialed 411 not because I didn't know numbers, but because I didn't want to call anyone who might still expect me to wait. The next thing I knew, I was climbing onto a late-night Greyhound ticket, paid in cash from the emergency envelope I'd kept tucked inside my wallet for 17 years. "In case you ever need to disappear," my husband once joked, slipping in the first $20 bill after his cancer diagnosis. I sat by the window's stiff leather seat, creaking under my hips. My reflection in the glass looked older than I remembered. maybe the light, maybe the truth. We pulled away from Asheville, the ridgeline darkening behind us. The bus was quiet. No one asked where I was going. No one offered a seatbelt speech or called me Mom. I watched the road unspool like ribbon into the dark, and I didn't think about what came next. Only that it wouldn't include anyone asking me to sit one more minute in the parking lot of their lives. The bus pulled into Santa Fe just after 6 a.m. The station was small, just a bench, 2 vending machines, and a bored man behind a plexiglass window who looked like he'd seen more runaways than suitcases. I stepped off the bus with my tote bag, my wallet, and the aching stillness of someone who hadn't spoken a word all night. The air hit different here, dry, honest. No perfume of humidity like back east. Just sun-baked sidewalk and the faint scent of piñon smoke drifting in from someone's chimney. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't need to. That was the miracle. For once, no one expected anything of me. I sat on the concrete bench and watched a man in a straw hat sweep dust from the entryway of a bakery across the street. There was a sign in the window that said, "We open when we feel like it." I liked that. I liked it a lot. I checked into a cheap motel off Cerrillos Road. A turquoise door, a cracked stucco wall, and a key, a real key, not a card handed to me without question. Room 109 smelled like pine cleaner and resignation, but the sheets were clean and the water ran hot. I stood under the shower for 20 minutes, letting the dirt of the highway and the weight of 8 decades circle the drain. That afternoon, I walked. Slowly. Not out of weakness, but out of unfamiliar luxury. I had nowhere to be, no one to call, no casserole to bake or appointment to remember. For decades, my life had been a calendar of other people's needs. Now there was only the sun, my feet, and the click of my coin purse. 2 blocks from the motel, I passed a small bakery with a wooden sign, "The Morning Crust," breads, coffee, quiet welcome. I stopped. Inside, the place smelled like cinnamon and fresh yeast and warm butter. Not a chain, not a brand. Just shelves of imperfect loaves and counters worn smooth by elbows and years. A woman behind the counter looked up from a tray of cooling biscuits. Her apron was flour-dusted, her gray hair twisted into a loose bun held with a pencil. "Help you?" she asked, not unkindly, just efficient. Her name tag said Sylvia. "Do you need help?" I asked. It came out before I could second-guess myself. She raised an eyebrow. "You want a job?" I nodded. "I've baked for 50 years. I can knead, roll, pour, and clean. And I'm early. Always." She studied me for a long moment. Then she shrugged. "Trial shift tomorrow, 5:30 a.m. Don't be late." That night, I sat on the edge of the motel bed and folded the motel's notepad into a to-do list, wake at 4:45. Wear the blue blouse. Don't apologize for anything. I slept lightly, waking once to the sound of a coyote somewhere in the hills, and again to the unfamiliar calm of not being needed. The morning crust at dawn was quiet, still smelling of dreams and sugar. Sylvia handed me a hairnet and a clean apron. "No perfume," she said. "People come here for bread, not ghosts." I nodded. The kitchen was tight and hot and loud with metal and heat and rising dough. I found my rhythm in the knead, the sprinkle, the lift. My hands remembered everything. My heart remembered nothing. And that was a relief. By 9 a.m., the front bell chimed with regulars. I worked the register. Sylvia watched, arms crossed. When the rush calmed, she muttered, "You're hired. $12 an hour. Cash. No drama." I almost laughed. I hadn't earned money for myself in 20 years. I used to think that made me generous. Now I realized it just made me invisible. After my first shift, I wandered further into town. Adobe houses, chili ristras, hanging from every porch, art galleries with names I couldn't pronounce. I passed a corkboard outside a laundromat with paper tabs fluttering like wings. Cabin for rent, one person only, no pets, no nonsense. Cash, weekly. Call Ramona. I took a picture of the number. That evening I called from the motel. The voice on the other end was sharp like gravel underfoot. "You clean?" she asked. "Yes." "No boyfriends." I laughed. Not since Reagan was in office. "Come by in the morning, 8 sharp. Bring rent." Ramona's cabin was on the edge of town, just past a ridge of dry hills and wild sunflowers. It was squat, square, and perfect. A wooden porch, a blue door, and a clothesline that stretched like a spine across the backyard. Ramona opened the door in socks and a flannel shirt, a cigarette in one hand, and a measuring tape around her neck. "You, Elaine?" "Yes." She stepped aside. "Come in. Let's see if we can tolerate each other." The cabin was lived in, not messy. Books stacked in corners. A cat asleep in a frying pan on the stove. The room she offered had a twin bed, a dresser, and a window that looked east toward nothing but open land. $100 a week. Cash. No gossip. I mind my business. You mind yours. I pulled the envelope from my purse and handed her 5 20s. She didn't count them. "You hungry?" she asked. Always. We ate grilled cheese and tomato soup in silence. She didn't ask about the past. Just passed me the pepper without comment. And that, in some strange, sacred way, was more comforting than 1,000 concerned questions. That night, in my little bed under a blanket that smelled faintly of cedar and old dreams, I didn't cry. I just breathed deeply, like someone finally allowed to exist without a script. The desert air slipped through the window, cool and dry. The stars above Santa Fe looked close enough to hold. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone left behind. I felt like someone who had finally arrived. By the second week, my hands stopped aching after the morning shifts. My body remembered what it was to work, to earn, to matter. Every Friday, Sylvia handed me my wages in a paper envelope, always the same way. "Here. Spend it on something you don't need." So I did. Wool socks with little blue birds on them. A second-hand mug with a chip that looked like a crescent moon. A cinnamon bun from the market that I ate sitting on a bench without sharing. Small things. My things. Ramona kept her distance the way desert people do. She didn't pry. I didn't volunteer. But we shared space like 2 old cats, quietly with mutual respect. She gardened in the mornings, made lentil stew on Thursdays, and yelled at game shows with no mercy. We never talked about family. But one night, over split pea soup, she looked up from her bowl and said, "The people who need you to disappear are usually the ones who only liked you when you were quiet." Then she went back to her spoon, like it hadn't been a confession. One evening, just as I was closing up at the cafe, Sylvia came from the back with my phone in hand. "You got a call," she said. Eyes squinting, like she wasn't sure what to make of it. "Kid said he found the number through a receipt you left in a book donation box." I blinked. Then I remembered the week before I left Asheville, I'd slipped a note into my old recipe book before dropping it at the community library box. Just my name and a burner number I'd never used, just in case someone ever cared to look. Turns out Jesse had found it. His voice cracked through the line. "Grandma, I'm here, darling." A long pause. Then, "You're safe." "I'm better than safe. I'm free." He didn't ask questions. Didn't guilt me. Just said, "I miss you. A lot." "I miss you too." That was enough. No addresses. No apologies. Just knowing someone out there was looking not to control me, not to fetch me, just to say, "You still matter." That Friday at the Morning Crust, Sylvia passed me a sticky note as I wiped down the counters. "You've got a visitor." I looked up. A man stood by the window, clean-shaven, maybe mid-60s, wearing a shirt too crisp for this town. He wasn't looking at the bread. He was looking for someone. He spotted me, stepped forward. "Mrs. Morrow." I stiffened. "Who's asking?" "Derek Sorensen." "I'm here on behalf of Brian and Kimberly Morrow. They're very concerned about your well-being and your current situation." He said it like I was a case file, not a person. I folded my apron neatly. "Tell them I'm not a potted plant they forgot in the trunk." He blinked. "We just want to make sure you're safe. Perhaps discuss next steps." I stepped past him. "There are no next steps unless I take them." Outside, the air was sharp with pine and dust. Sylvia lit a cigarette behind the cafe, watching me quietly. "Lawyer?" she asked. Something like that. She didn't press, just handed me a scone and said, "Eat. You're still standing. That counts." That night, I turned my phone on for the first time in weeks. 34 missed calls, 17 voicemails. The oldest one, "Kimberly, frantic Elaine, we thought you were in the bathroom. We couldn't find you. Please call us. We're boarding." I listened once, then deleted it. Brian's messages grew angrier. "This isn't funny, Mom. This is childish. You're worrying everyone." And finally, "Fine. Do what you want. Just don't expect us to come looking anymore." But they already had. The next day, Jesse called. I let it ring twice before answering. "Grandma." His voice cracked like he hadn't dared hope I'd pick up. "I'm here, darling." A pause. Then, "You're okay. Better than okay. Where are you?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I chose." He didn't ask more. Didn't guilt me. He just said, "I miss you. I miss you too." And that was enough. No apologies, no explanations. Just someone who still wanted me in their life, not for what I could give, but for who I was. A few days later, Sylvia handed me a newspaper clipping someone left on the cafe counter. "Missing grandmother family pleads for answers." There was a picture of me from 5 years ago, holding a pie dish at a church picnic. The headline made me sound like I'd wandered into traffic. Brian was quoted saying, "We just want her home. This isn't like her. She's vulnerable, vulnerable." I laughed, out loud, so sharp even Sylvia turned. "Vulnerable," I said. "I've been cooking for 3 generations and surviving on 1 lung. I'm not a kitten." She didn't comment. Just handed me the scissors. "Want to clip it for your scrapbook? I took it home, but not to save." I pinned it to the wall over my desk as a reminder. People only miss you when they can't use you. Jesse wrote again. This time a postcard. I started working at a bookstore. Low pay, but peaceful. Books don't yell at you. You'd love it. He signed it with a small drawing of a finch, the bird we used to watch from the kitchen window when he was little. I taped it to my mirror. Weeks passed. The sky changed color. The mornings came colder. The rhythm of the cafe grew familiar: biscuits at 6 deliveries, at 7:30 tourists by 9. Then one morning, Ramona was waiting at the kitchen table with a flyer in her hand. "Community center's doing a potluck," she said. "We should go." I raised an eyebrow. "You go to potlucks, I go to free food, and people watching." I smiled. "I'll bake something. Make it loud. Make it say something." I knew just the thing. An old recipe card faded and creased. My husband's favorite spiced molasses cake with orange zest and black walnuts. That night, as the scent of cinnamon filled the little cabin and the oven rattled from age, I realized something. I wasn't baking for forgiveness. I was baking because I had something to bring to the table, and no one needed to invite me. The first frost came quietly. I woke to a crust of silver on the porch rail and the cat paw prints Ramona never wiped off. The desert doesn't shout its seasons, it shifts like a woman who's learned not to announce her grief. I poured my coffee and watched the clouds drag across the Sangre de Cristo peaks. My coat, navy wool, secondhand but proud, hung by the door like it belonged here now. Like I did. A week after the call with Jesse, a man in a slate gray blazer waited outside the cafe. Not a local. He stood 2 straight shoes too clean. I didn't speak first. Neither did he. Finally, he stepped forward. "Mrs. Morrow?" "I've answered that before. You'll have to be more specific." He gave a tight smile. "I represent Brian and Kimberly Morrow. They'd like to discuss your well-being and financial management." There it was not concern, but control, dressed in good manners. I folded my apron. "Tell them I am not a dependent. I am not vulnerable. I am not interested." They're worried. They weren't worried when I was sitting in a hot car eating a stale sandwich. He blinked, unprepared for the bluntness. "I'm just the messenger. Then carry this, I'm done. No legal follow-up needed. I've retained local counsel in case anyone wants to try again." I walked past him. He didn't follow. That night, I wrote a letter. "To whom it may concern, I am, of sound mind, living by my own choice in a safe and stable environment. Any future contact framed as concern will be regarded as harassment. I am not missing. I am no longer available. Elaine Morrow." I mailed it the next morning with a stamp that had a hawk in flight. Ramona didn't ask what the letter was about. She never did. But as she poured lentil stew into chipped bowls that evening, she muttered, "The ones who need you most usually hated when you were strong." I raised my spoon like a toast. The community center potluck was a Thursday night thing. Ramona wore a sweatshirt that said, "You bring it, I'll judge it." I brought my spiced molasses cake dense with walnut and memory. A woman in a quilted vest asked for the recipe. I told her it was classified. She laughed like we were already friends. Ramona introduced me to a retired welder named Charlie and a former school librarian named Iris. They invited us to join Trivia Tuesdays. I said I'd only come if the questions were all before 1990. That's the good stuff anyway. Iris winked. One afternoon, Jessie texted Grandma, "I'm coming to Santa Fe this weekend. Alone. If that's okay." It was. I didn't tell Ramona. She just looked at my lipstick. Saturday morning and said, "Well, look at you. Meeting the Pope." "Just someone holy to me," I said. We met at a little cafe off Canyon Road. He stood when I walked in, taller than I remembered, scruff on his chin, but the same soft around the eyes. "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, sweetheart." We didn't hug right away, just sat. 2 cups of tea between us. Space and also not. I read the note he said after a while. In the book. You meant for someone to find it. Not just anyone, but maybe you. He nodded. Mom's furious. Dad keeps pretending you're just on vacation. I sipped my tea. They'd rather rewrite the story than reread the pages. He laughed. Sad, but not bitter. You seem lighter. That's what happens when you put the bags down that never belonged to you. We talked for an hour. Books, memories, things we hadn't said in years. He didn't ask me to come home. I didn't ask him to stay. As we parted, he handed me a small box. Inside a silver pin shaped like a finch. For the window, he said. So it never feels closed again. I wore it on my coat the next morning. Back at the cafe, Sylvia tossed me a new apron. Dark green with white stitching. Not your grandma's kitchen, I laughed out loud. Arthur, the elderly customer who came in every Friday for cranberry bread, looked up and raised his coffee like a salute. At home, Ramona was repotting a jade plant. You look smug again. Jessie came to visit. She grunted. He seemed worth the trouble. He brought a finch. Smart boy. That night, I sat on the porch in a blanket, tea, and hand cat on my lap. The stars were sharp and endless. I wrote a note on a scrap of brown paper and tucked it behind my recipe cards. Dear me. You didn't run away. You arrived. You didn't lose them, they let go first. And you finally let go back. Well done. Me. I don't know if Brian and Kimberly will try again. Maybe with more words, maybe with lawyers, maybe with a sudden memory of obligation. Let them. They'll find an empty space where I used to sit quietly and say yes. Jessie texts every Sunday now. Just simple things. Bookstores slow today. Found a recipe that reminded me of you. Miss your cake. I always reply. Not because I owe him, but because he never asked me to disappear. So that's it. That's my story. I wasn't lost. I was left. And then I left back. I didn't rebuild. I rewrote. And if you're sitting somewhere waiting for someone to come back for you, hear me now. You don't need rescuing. You need remembering. And maybe a bus ticket with your own name on it. So go. Be your own reason. Be your own sign. And if you do, tell me about it. I'll be here in a small cabin outside Santa Fe with cinnamon on the windowsill and a finch on my coat. Sometimes people ask quietly, don't you miss them? And the honest answer is yes. But I miss the idea of them more than the people they became. The ones who used to hold my hand crossing the street. Not the ones who left me locked in a car because the venue was too loud for my age. I mourn what we never got to be. But I refuse to mourn myself just because they stopped looking. Some nights I still wake early. Muscle memory. Decades of serving others doesn't vanish easily. But now I get up, make coffee just the way I like it, strong, no sugar, and watch the sunrise like it owes me nothing. And it doesn't. That's the beauty of this new life. It doesn't demand, it just offers. And I finally have learned to receive.